So when we talk about least privilege, how do we make people understand it? Because it is quite it might seem obvious to us, but I think still some people really struggle to understand what it means.
Yeah, it's been a major issue in the industry. It came a lot from, for example, from military backgrounds and government areas where they really have this focus around least privilege in regards to confidential or sensitive material.
Right.
And it's really kind of moved into more of the technology industry to use what's called as the principle of least privilege.
Yeah.
And the challenge is that many people don't really understand that technology-wise, and that really fail to really get a grasp of it. And when I was writing the least privilege Cybersecurity for Dummies book, that I came up with so many metaphors that I really we had a massive debate into which one actually got into the book.
Sure.
And I tried to simplify it from these metaphors, which is really, if you think about the hotel analogy, which is the one that most people will probably relate to when they go to a hotel and they get their key card for the room and they go up and they get into the room and they have access. That key card will sometimes, for the guests, will give them access to the elevators, the common areas, and the room, and that's typically it. But if you're an employee, and you think about an employee perspective, that a hotel employee, let's say maintenance or a cleaner, they will get a key card that accesses all rooms and all floors that they can use on, basically unfederated.
Quite risky, really.
Which is a major risk. And that's the one ethical hackers are going after, is that master key.
Yeah.
And if you think about least privilege, so privilege access is once that key gives you access to floors and all the rooms. And then when you get into the room, that person can do whatever they want to. There's no detection, there's no alarms, there's nothing. So they can make changes to the room. They can open up the safe, the window, the doors, and so forth. And the least privilege is really taking it from a much more restrictive approach, meaning that the key that employee gets, it only gives them access to the rooms that they've been assigned to that day.
Right.
You're assigned to clean, floor 3 or do maintenance in, room 1, 2, and 3. Therefore, that card is basically real-time access to only those rooms you've been assigned. The next part of that, so that's privilege access. That's what you're getting into, privilege access. The next side is that least privilege. Once you're inside the room, you may not be allowed to do certain actions or tasks. You may have trusted or untrusted, let's say, policies. So I may be able to open the safe and turn on the TV, but I'm not allowed to open the window because the window will weaken the security of the room.
Understood.
So least privilege is really there to enable you to do the minimum amount of tasks to do your job without decreasing, let's say, the security that you've got, and increasing the risk over the overall employees' access.
I don't think that there are a lot of enterprises that really do that yet, though.
Governments are doing it in certain areas. Financial industry are doing it much more now, post the 2008 scenario.
It's definitely going like that, but I think that we've got a way to go, haven't we, I think?
Absolutely. A lot of the reasons was that people, failed because they were pushing the complete opposite, and that they were removing all access, and therefore it became a much more ineffective approach because people couldn't do their jobs. Yeah. It increased help desk calls. It meant that people couldn't, install printers and change Wi-Fi access or change the date and time. And what's really happened today is that if you combine privilege access management along with things like application control, and then combining things what we refer to as trusted sources, then that really enables an automated least privilege approach. Because you can assign trusted sources, it may be vendors or locations, and therefore any of those actions are automatically elevated, and anything that's untrusted will be actually prevented. Yeah. And this is really where organizations can accelerate their path to least privilege much better today than they could have, let's say, 10 years ago.
Principle of least privilege feels like just common sense, doesn't it? It feels like common sense. It doesn't feel like it should be a strange concept.
I think that's the problem, is that common sense, that people realize that they remove the privileges and it caused a lot of mayhem. Yeah. And now they're re-looking at it again because, of course, compliance mandates in many cases. It's part of the core part of EU GDPR.
So it's done something good then?
It's done something good. And I think organizations now can see that the combination of several technologies today can definitely enable them to get to least privilege approach without the increased help desk calls or reduced productivity that happened in the past. Yeah. There's ways to improve and get around that today.
Joe, one of the things I see, obviously, you're regularly on social media, and your social media profile picture is you with the book in your hand, your Cybersecurity for Dummies book. Tell me a bit more about that.
So one of the things, it started, first book we wrote was the Privilege Access Manager, Privilege Account Management for Dummies, which is really focusing around the privilege access side, which the product does. And then we realized that, we want to do something back for the industry. This is really helping organizations take a journey down that privilege access management path. When we decided said, let's do something a bit more broader, and we decided to go back. Let's give something that everyone can use that helps them actually be a better early warning, better ways at identifying threats. So then we wrote the Cybersecurity for Dummies book, and that book ended up becoming widely recognized and also award-winning book last year, which was great to be recognized on.
Great.
And it's really that type of book that is for all employees to really give them enough information that they become not just safe in the workplace, but also safe at home.
Yeah.
And one of the things that my kind of strong message is that I'm only secure as the people around me.
Yeah.
The network that I keep, my colleagues, my friends, my peers, my family.
Yeah.
And therefore, the more we make them secure, the more secure we become. And that was the emphasis of the book, is that the more we spread that news, the more people around us become secure.
Yeah.
And therefore, the more we become secure ourselves. And that's kind of the idea that we're trying to establish. So that was the first kind of book that we kind of pushed out there from a knowledge base.
Yeah.
And then the more recent book that we actually then launched earlier this year was the Least Privileged Cybersecurity for Dummies, which is really about the next step in privilege access. Is about now you get access, how do I make sure that you have the least amount of access in order to perform your job?
Yeah.
So those books are widely available now, both printed and digital formats for people to learn about the topics.
Joe, thank you very much for joining us today. It's been really appreciated. I've thoroughly enjoyed our conversation.
Brilliant. No problem. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, thank you. Don't forget to join us next week.